Admiral Park stood at the observation window of the orbital station. He was 62 years old, and his face carried lines that told stories of 30 years of war, loss, and stubborn hope. Below him, Earth turned slowly in the darkness. Once it had been blue and green and full of life. Now large patches of brown covered the continents. The forests were dying. The oceans were shrinking. Humanity was starving. And in every direction, the patrol ships circled like wolves around wounded prey. The Dominion had arrived in the Sol system 30 years ago. They came not as conquerors at first, but as judges. Their massive ships blocked out the sun as they scanned Earth and declared humanity a containment species. Too aggressive, they said. Too dangerous to be allowed into the galaxy. Too primitive to matter. They built a blockade around the entire solar system. No ship could enter. No ship could leave. Trade routes were cut. Colony ships were destroyed before they could escape. Earth was sealed in a prison of stars. Park remembered the early years. Humanity had fought back then, sending their best ships against the fleet. It was like throwing stones at a mountain. The technology was thousands of years ahead. Their shields laughed at human weapons. Their guns turned human ships into dust. So humanity stopped fighting and started surviving. They rationed food. They recycled everything. They built underground farms and learned to live with less and less. But even survival has limits. The population had dropped from 12 billion to 4 billion. Children grew up without ever tasting real fruit. Old people died from diseases that medicine could no longer treat because the factories had no materials. And now they had decided that slow death was not fast enough. Park turned away from the window as his second-in-command, Captain Lee, entered the room. She was 45, sharp-eyed, and carried a tablet that glowed with red warning symbols. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight, "we intercepted a transmission. The High Council has voted." Park did not ask what the vote was about. He already knew. When? 40 days. They are calling it the final cleansing. Their main fleet is already moving towards Sol. Park closed his eyes for a moment. 40 days. After 30 years of slow strangulation, they had finally decided to finish the job. 4 billion human lives. 40 days. "How many ships?" he asked. "Over 3,000. Dreadnoughts, carriers, destroyers, everything they have." Park almost laughed. Humanity had perhaps 200 ships that could still fly. Most of them were old, patched together with parts from other old ships. Against 3,000 warships, they might as well fight with kitchen knives. "There is something else," Captain Lee said. She hesitated. "Doctor wants to see you. She says it is urgent, she says. She says they did it." Park looked up sharply. "Did what?" "She would not say over communications. She wants you to come to the facility, personally." Park had not visited the underground research facility in 3 years. It was humanity's last secret, buried deep beneath the ruins of old. Thousands of scientists worked there on projects that they knew nothing about. Most of those projects had failed. Weapons that did not work, shields that could not hold, engines that exploded. But Doctor was different. She was 34 years old, brilliant in ways that made other scientists uncomfortable, and she had been working on something she called impossible for 10 years. Park took a shuttle down to Earth that night. The journey through the atmosphere showed him things he wished he could forget. Cities dark and empty, rivers that had turned to mud, fields where nothing grew. The shuttle landed near a collapsed building, and Park walked through a hidden entrance into the underground facility. The tunnels were cold and smelled of recycled air. Scientists moved past him with tired eyes and coffee cups that contained something that was definitely not coffee. Doctor was waiting for him in her laboratory. She was a small woman with messy hair and glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. Her lab coat had old stains on it, and she looked like she had not slept in several days. But her eyes were bright with something Park had not seen in a long time. "Hope." "Admiral Park," she said, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward a large window that looked into a testing chamber. "You need to see this. You need to see what we did." Inside the chamber sat a small ship. It was nothing special to look at, just a standard scout vessel with some modifications. But attached to its hull was a device that pulsed with soft blue light. "We call it the fold drive," Doctor said, talking fast. "Conventional FTL creates a tunnel through space. They can detect those tunnels, they can block them, that is how they keep us trapped. But this does not create tunnels, it folds space. It takes point A and point B and makes them the same point. The ship does not travel, it simply arrives." Park stared at the device. "You are saying this can bypass the blockade?" "I am saying this can bypass anything. Distance becomes meaningless. You could be here one moment and on the other side of the galaxy the next. They cannot detect it because there is nothing to detect. No tunnel, no energy signature. The ship just vanishes and reappears." Park felt his heart beating faster. "Has it been tested?" Doctor smiled. It was a tired smile, but real. "That is why I called you here. We are about to test it now. First manned flight." She pressed a button on her console. Inside the chamber, the small ship hummed to life. Park could see a pilot inside, a young woman with short hair and steady hands. He recognized her. Lieutenant Miso, 26 years old, one of the best pilots in what remained of the human fleet. "Lieutenant volunteered," Doctor said. "She said she wanted to be the first human to see stars without ships blocking the view." The blue light on the fold drive grew brighter. Park held his breath. Then, without any sound, without any flash, the ship simply was not there anymore. One moment it existed. The next moment the chamber was empty. Doctor pulled up a screen showing a map of the solar system. A red dot appeared on the far side of Neptune, well beyond the patrol routes. "She made it," Doctor whispered. "She is outside the blockade." Park stared at the screen. Outside the blockade. In 30 years, no human had managed that. Thousands had tried. Thousands had died. And now a small ship with a strange device had done it in less than a second. "Can you build more of these?" Park asked. "Yes, it will take time, but yes, we can build hundreds, maybe thousands." Park turned to face her. His eyes were hard now, filled with something dangerous. "They are coming in 40 days to exterminate us," he said. "They think we are trapped rats waiting to die. They do not know about this." "No," Doctor agreed, "they do not." "Then we have 40 days to change everything. Not to run, not to hide, to prepare." He looked back at the empty chamber where Lieutenant's ship had vanished. "They pushed us into a corner for 30 years. They starved our children. They killed our hope. They thought that would break us." His hands formed fists at his sides. "They were wrong. You do not corner humanity and expect us to die quietly. You corner us and we become something else, something they have never faced before." Doctor watched him with wide eyes. "What are we going to become, Admiral?" Park smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Their nightmare." Far beyond Neptune, Lieutenant Miso looked out at the stars. Real stars without ships crawling between them. She was crying and she did not care. She was the first free human in 30 years. But she would not be the last. 18 months after Lieutenant Miso became the first human to escape the blockade, the last evacuation ship left Earth. General watched it rise through the brown sky from the window of her command bunker. 3.2 billion humans had been moved to hidden colony worlds in the Rim territories. It was the largest migration in human history, and they had not noticed a single ship. The fold drive had changed everything. General was 48 years old with silver streaks in her black hair and eyes that had forgotten how to be soft. She had spent 20 years fighting a war that could not be won, watching good soldiers die for nothing. Now she was fighting a different kind of war, a war of preparation, a war of patience, a war that humanity might actually win. She turned away from the window and walked through the bunker to the strategic planning room. Holographic maps covered the walls, showing star systems, fleet positions, and supply lines that stretched across hundreds of light years. A year ago, humanity had known nothing about the galaxy beyond their prison. Now they knew more about space than many did. Engineer O was waiting for her, his hands covered in grease and his eyes red from lack of sleep. He was 41, a practical man who solved impossible problems by refusing to believe they were impossible. "The asteroid yards are at full production," he reported. "We are building 12 warships per week now. The new ones have triple reinforced hulls and weapon systems that should actually hurt shields." "Should?" General raised an eyebrow. They will hurt shields." O smiled slightly. "We captured some shield generators from an unmanned station last month, tested our new plasma cannons against them. The shields held for about 4 seconds before collapsing." 4 seconds is a long time in combat. "That is why we are mounting 6 cannons per ship. Fire them all at once, the shields collapse in less than 1 second. He pulled up a hologram of a sleek warship, angular and aggressive in design. "We are calling this class the Fury. Appropriate, I think." General nodded slowly. "The first human warship class designed not for defense, but for attack. Not for survival, but for victory." The door opened, and Captain I.M. entered. She was 29, lean and quiet, with the careful movements of someone who had spent too much time in dangerous places. She led the reconnaissance teams that slipped into space, mapping their territory and learning their secrets. "You asked to see me, General," she said. "I did. Your latest report mentioned something interesting, something about other species." Captain I.M.'s face darkened. She pulled a data chip from her pocket and inserted it into the holographic display. Images appeared, ruins of cities, mass graves, entire planets burned to lifeless rock. "They have done this before," she said quietly. 17 times before. 17 species that they declared too dangerous or too primitive or simply inconvenient. They called it cleansing. They killed every single member of those species. Men, women, children, destroyed their cities, burned their books, erased them from history. General stared at the images. A child's toy lying in the ashes of a destroyed home. Bones scattered across a field that had once been a park. The skeleton of a creature that might have been beautiful once, its arms raised as if trying to protect itself from something that could not be stopped. 17 species, she repeated. "That we know of. There might be more. They do not keep detailed records of their genocides. Why would they? To them it is just pest control." Engineer O looked sick, "And we were going to be number 18. General said firmly. "Not anymore, not ever." She walked to the main display and brought up a map of space. 12 star systems, hundreds of planets, trillions of aliens living under rule. "This is not about survival anymore," she said. "This is not about escaping and hiding and hopping. They forget about us. We do not get to hide, because if we hide, they will keep doing this. Another species will be number 18, and 19, and 20, until there is no one left in this galaxy except thee and the species too afraid to stand up to them." She turned to face her officers. "We are going to war, real war, not defense, not resistance. We are going to take the fight to them, and we are not going to stop until the Dominion answers for every species they murdered." Captain I.M. stepped forward. "General, we have 200 ships. They have thousands. Even with the fold drive, even with our new weapons, the numbers." "The numbers are what they are," General agreed. "But we have advantages they cannot imagine. We can appear anywhere, anytime. We have spent 18 months studying their weaknesses while they have spent 30 years ignoring us, and most importantly," she smiled coldly, "we have absolutely nothing to lose. They took everything from us already. Our homes, our children, our future. What are we supposed to be afraid of? Death. They have been killing us slowly for 30 years. At least this way, we get to kill them back." The room was silent. Then Engineer O straightened his shoulders. "I can increase production, push the yards harder. In 6 months we will have 500 ships. Captain I.M. nodded slowly. I have identified 7 targets. Industrial worlds, supply depots, communication hubs. Hit them all at once, and we cripple their ability to respond. General looked at them both. These tired, overworked people who had kept humanity alive against impossible odds. Now they were going to do something even harder. They were going to win. Then we have work to do. 6 months later, the human fleet gathered in the darkness between stars. 200 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls dark and silent, their crews waiting for the order that would change the galaxy forever. General stood on the bridge of the flagship New Dawn, looking at the faces of her officers. Admiral Park stood beside her, his old eyes bright with something fierce. Lieutenant Miso sat at the pilot station, her hands steady on the controls. Doctor watched from the science station, her impossible drive humming in every ship. Open a channel, General ordered, all ships. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, General. Took a deep breath. 200 ships, 50,000 humans, the last army of a species that had been sentenced to death. She had to find the right words. Words that would turn survivors into soldiers. Words that would turn fear into fury. This is General, she began. You all know why we are here. 30 years ago, they decided we were not worthy of the stars. They locked us in our own solar system and watched us die slowly. They starved our children. They murdered our hope. They called us vermin. She paused, letting the anger build. They did not know what they were creating. They thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they were forging a weapon. Every year of hunger made us tougher. Every loss made us angrier. Every death made us more determined to make them pay. Her voice rose. Today we stop being victims. Today we become what they feared we would become. Not refugees, not survivors, conquerors. We will take their worlds. We will burn their fleets. We will teach the entire galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity. She looked out at the stars ahead. They had 10,000 years to build their empire. We had 18 months to build our revenge. And I promise you, soldiers of Earth, our revenge will be biblical. The channel crackled with responses, cheers, battle cries, the sound of 50,000 humans finally allowed to fight back. General turned to Lieutenant at the pilot station. Take us to war. The fold drives activated across 200 ships. The fleet vanished from the darkness between stars. In the Dominion, people were sleeping peacefully, certain that the universe belonged to them, certain that the contained humans were dying quietly in their prison. They were about to wake up to a new reality. Overseer of Terminus 7 was having a pleasant morning. He sat in his tower office, high above the industrial sprawl of the planet's main city, sipping a warm drink and reviewing production reports. Terminus 7 was one of the Dominion's most important manufacturing worlds, producing weapons and ships for the glorious fleet. Had managed this world for 40 years, and he was proud of its efficiency. His assistant entered with more reports. The quota for this quarter has been exceeded by 12%, Overseer. Excellent, set down his drink. The High Council will be pleased. Any news from the Sol containment? The final cleansing fleet is assembling. Estimated arrival at Sol in 16 days. The human problem will be resolved soon. Made a dismissive gesture with his long, gray fingers. Finally, 30 years is too long to waste resources on vermin. Once they are gone, we can redirect those patrol ships to more useful duties. He turned back to his window, looking out at the factories and shipyards that covered the landscape. Thousands of workers moved between buildings. Transport ships rose and fell from landing pads. Everything was orderly. Everything was efficient. Everything was exactly as it should be. Then the sky changed. Blinked. There had been nothing in orbit a moment ago except the standard defensive satellites and a few cargo vessels. Now there were ships, many ships, ships that had not been there 1 second ago. What? He began. The first explosion cut off his words. A defensive satellite vanished in a ball of fire. Then another. Then another. The strange ships were moving fast, impossibly fast, their weapons firing in coordinated bursts that tore through the orbital defenses like they were made of paper. Alarms screamed throughout the tower. Assistant was shouting into a communication device, demanding answers that no one could give. Overseer, the ships. They are not unknown design, unknown weapons. They appeared without warning, without any FTL signature, without. I can see that, snapped. Launch the defense fleet, contact the nearest battle group, get me the High Council. But even as he gave the orders, he watched his defense fleet die. The orbital stations that had protected Terminus 7 for centuries were torn apart in minutes. The warships that launched to meet the attackers were destroyed before they could even return fire. The enemy ships moved in ways that should have been impossible, appearing in one location and then simply being somewhere else, dodging missiles that should have hit them, striking from angles that made no sense. In 90 minutes it was over. Every ship in orbit was debris. Every satellite was dust. The strange fleet hung in the sky above Terminus 7, silent and terrible. Then the landing craft came. Commander Shin led the first wave. He was 35 years old, a former merchant captain who had spent the blockade years smuggling supplies between the dying human colonies. He had lost 2 ships and 3 crews to patrol vessels. He had lost his wife and son to a disease that medicine could have cured if the blockade had not cut off their supplies. He had been waiting a long time for this day. His landing craft touched down in the main plaza of the capital city. Around him, hundreds of other craft were landing, thousands of human soldiers pouring out with weapons ready. The civilians were screaming, running, hiding. They had never seen humans before except in pictures. They had been told humans were primitive animals, barely intelligent, certainly not capable of this. Secure the government buildings, Shin ordered over his communication system. Capture the overseer. I want the communication hub intact. We have a message to send. Corporal No was part of the team that moved on the communication hub. She was 24 years old, born during the blockade, raised on recycled water and synthetic food. She had never seen a blue sky or a green forest or an ocean that was not dying. She had never imagined she would walk on an alien world. Now she was walking through the streets of an alien city, and the aliens were running from her. The communication hub was a tall building in the center of the city. Guards tried to defend it. They were brave, would admit that. They stood their ground and fired their weapons and believed they were facing inferior creatures. They were wrong. Human weapons tore through armor. Human soldiers moved in coordinated patterns that years of desperate survival had perfected. The guards fell, one by one, and then the hub was theirs. Hub secure, reported. No casualties on our side. Commander Shin arrived minutes later with the technical team. They worked quickly, taking control of the communication systems, preparing to broadcast on every frequency the Dominion used. Ready, Commander, the tech officer reported. Shin stood in front of the camera. Behind him, through the window, the capital city spread out under a sky filled with human warships. He took a moment to think about what he wanted to say. What did you say to an empire that had tried to exterminate your species? What words could possibly express 30 years of suffering, 30 years of loss, 30 years of being treated like animals waiting to be slaughtered? He decided to keep it simple. This message is for the High Council and all citizens of the Dominion. My name is Commander Shin of the Human Fleet. I am standing in your capital city on Terminus 7. Your orbital defenses have been destroyed. Your garrison has surrendered. Your industrial world is now under human control. He paused, letting that sink in across the galaxy. You declared us a containment species. You blockaded our system. You starved our children and murdered our people. You thought you could exterminate us quietly, without consequences, without anyone caring." His voice hardened. "You were wrong, we are not extinct. We are here, and we know what you did not just to us, to 17 other species who did nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy you wanted to control. 17 civilizations erased, billions of lives ended, children burned, histories destroyed." He stepped closer to the camera. "This is our declaration. We do not want peace. We do not want negotiation. We want justice, for Earth, for the 17 species you murdered. For every life you decided did not matter, we will come for every world, every station, every ship, until your empire answers for its crimes, until the galaxy is free of your shadow." He smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "You should have killed us when you had the chance. Now it is too late. We are coming, and we are not going to stop." The broadcast ended. Across 12 star systems, citizens watched in shock. The High Council convened in emergency session, the first time in 300 years. Military commanders scrambled to respond to a threat they had never imagined. Back in the communication hub, Corporal No helped escort the captured overseer into Commander Shin's presence. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and yellow eyes that were wide with disbelief. His fine robes were dirty now, his dignity stripped away. "What are you?" whispered, staring at the human commander. "How did you do this? You are supposed to be primitives. You are supposed to be dying." Commander Shin looked at him without hatred. Hatred was too personal for this. This was not about one alien overseer. This was about an empire that had decided humanity did not deserve to live. "We are what you created," Shin said simply. "You wanted us to die. You pushed us into a corner and watched us starve. You thought that would break us." He leaned closer. "It did not break us. It made us harder, stronger, angrier. Every year of the blockade we learned. We adapted. We remembered. And now we are here to collect on 30 years of debt." His yellow eyes were full of something Shin had never seen in before. "Fear." "What will you do to us?" the alien asked. Shin straightened up. "That depends on your council. Surrender and accept judgment and there will be mercy. Fight and there will be none." He turned away from the captured overseer. "Take him to the detention area. Treat him well. We are not like them. We do not murder prisoners." As the soldiers led away, Corporal approached Commander Shin. "Sir, do you think they will surrender?" Shin looked out the window at the alien city, at the human ships overhead, at the beginning of a war that would reshape the galaxy. "No," he said, "they will not. They have never faced an enemy they could not destroy. They do not know how to surrender, so we will have to teach them." Nodded. "Then I guess we have more work to do." "Yes," Shin agreed, "much more." Far away in the capital of the Dominion, the High Council was learning for the first time what it meant to be afraid. For 10,000 years, they had been the predators of the galaxy. Now, something was hunting them. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 years after Terminus 7, the Dominion was burning. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the flagship New Dawn, watching the tactical display show battle after battle across 7-star systems. Red dots marked fleets. Blue dots marked human forces, and everywhere the red was retreating. He was 65 years old now. The years of war had aged him, turned his hair completely white and carved new lines into his face. But his eyes were still sharp, and his mind was still faster than any strategic computer. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "Third Fleet has secured the system. Fourth Fleet is engaging remnants at. Seventh Fleet reports complete victory at the astral shipyards." 7 systems hit simultaneously. 3 years ago, such coordination would have been impossible. Now it was routine. The fold drive had changed the nature of war. Human fleets could appear anywhere, strike hard and vanish before they could respond. Traditional military strategy, built over 10,000 years, was useless against enemies who did not follow the rules of space and time. "What are our casualties?" Park asked. "Minimal, Admiral. The nullifier performed beyond expectations." Park allowed himself a small smile. The nullifier was Doctor's masterpiece, a device that, when activated, sent a pulse that permanently disabled shield generators. Ships that had once been invincible fortresses became vulnerable targets. The technological advantage that had allowed them to dominate the galaxy was gone. The door to the bridge opened and Ambassador entered. She was 52, elegant despite the military uniform she now wore, with a diplomat's careful eyes and a survivor's hard edges. While the military fought directly, she had been fighting a different battle. A battle of words and alliances and promises. "Admiral," she said, "I have news from the—" Park turned to face her. There were a species that had nearly been exterminated by the 200 years ago. A remnant population survived on hidden colony worlds, forgotten by the Dominion. Captain IM had found them during her reconnaissance missions. "They have agreed to join us," Ambassador continued. 200 ships, 30,000 soldiers. They want revenge almost as much as we do." "Almost?" Park raised an eyebrow. "They killed 90% of their population. They have been hiding and waiting for 2 centuries, dreaming of a day they never thought would come." She paused. "When I told them what humanity was doing, their leader cried. She said she had given up hope that anyone would ever stand against the Dominion." Park nodded slowly. They were not the only ones. As humanity's war spread across the galaxy, other species had begun to emerge from hiding. They had made many enemies over 10,000 years of conquest. Most of those enemies had been destroyed, but some had survived, scattered and broken, waiting in the darkness. Now they were coming together. In a different part of space, Sergeant led his guerrilla unit through the ruins of a city that had once been an administrative center. He was 31 years old, lean, and with eyes that had seen too much death. His unit specialized in ground operations, liberation, sabotage, teaching occupied populations that they were not invincible. "Sergeant," his scout reported, "prison compound ahead, heavy guard presence." Studied the compound through his optical scope. High walls, guard towers, energy fences. Inside, he knew, were prisoners from half a dozen species that they had not quite finished exterminating. People who had spent decades in cages, forgotten by a galaxy that thought they were already dead. "How many guards?" he asked. 50, maybe 60. Standard security forces." Smiled. Standard security had been designed to control prisoners who had no hope of rescue. They were not prepared for humans. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Tell them we need exactly 2 minutes of orbital distraction." The attack began at midnight local time. Human ships appeared in orbit and began firing on military targets across the continent. Every eye turned skyward, every communication channel filled with emergency transmissions. And in that moment of chaos, units struck. They moved through the compound like shadows, silent and deadly. Guards fell before they could raise alarms. Doors opened to reveal prisoners who stared at their liberators with eyes that had forgotten how to hope. "Who are you?" a prisoner asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Humans," replied. "We are here to take you home." The woman began to cry. By morning, the prison compound was empty. 400 prisoners from 6 different species had been evacuated to human ships. Among them were elders who remembered when their civilizations had been great, scientists who had preserved knowledge in their heads because they had burned their libraries, leaders who had waited decades for a chance to rebuild. They were not just survivors anymore, they were allies. Back on the New Dawn, Doctor was working on the next phase of the war. Her laboratory was cramped and cluttered, filled with half-finished devices and equations scrawled on every available surface. She had not slept properly in months, driven by the knowledge that every weapon she created saved human lives. Admiral Park found her there, staring at a holographic model of Prime. You wanted to see me?" he asked. "The nullifier works against individual ships," she said without preamble. "But Prime has planetary shields, massive generators powered by the planet's core. We cannot disable them with normal nullifier pulses." Park frowned. "Can you build a bigger nullifier?" "I already have." She pulled up a schematic. "The problem is delivery. The device needs to be detonated inside the shield perimeter. Someone would have to fly directly into their defenses, past their fleet, through their orbital stations, and deploy the device manually. A suicide mission." Doctor shook her head. "Not necessarily. The fold drive can get a ship inside the perimeter, but the moment we appear, every weapon on the planet will target us. We would have maybe 30 seconds before we are destroyed. The question is whether that is enough time." Park studied the schematic. 30 seconds. That was a very short time to disable a planetary defense network and escape. But humanity had done impossible things before. "How big is this device?" he asked. "It can fit on a standard destroyer. I have already built 3 of them just in case." Park looked at her. This woman who had invented impossible technology, who had given humanity a chance when everyone thought they were doomed. She had worked miracles. Now she was asking him to find someone willing to fly into almost certain death. "I will lead the mission myself," a voice said from the doorway. They turned. Lieutenant Miso stood there, older now than she had been when she first escaped the blockade, but still with the same steady eyes and calm voice. "You cannot risk yourself, Admiral," she continued. "The fleet needs you, but I have been flying fold ships since the beginning. If anyone can survive 30 seconds in hell, it is me." Park wanted to argue. He wanted to protect her, the young pilot who had been the first free human in 30 years. But he had sent thousands of soldiers to die for this cause. He could not start making exceptions now. "Are you sure?" he asked. Miso smiled. "I was born during the blockade, Admiral. I spent my whole life in a cage. Now I have seen the stars. I have fought for my people. If I die opening the door to there, that is a good death." Park was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Prepare your ship. We move on Prime in 2 weeks." Far across the galaxy, the High Council received reports of another fleet destroyed, another system lost, another population rising in revolt. The war they had expected to win easily was becoming a catastrophe. Their empire was fracturing. Their subjects were rebelling. Their invincible military was dying piece by piece. And at the center of it all, humanity kept coming, relentless, unstoppable, driven by 30 years of rage and the memory of everyone they had lost. The High Arbiter, supreme leader of the Dominion, sat on his throne and contemplated something his predecessors had never faced: the possibility of defeat. "They are animals," he muttered. "Vermin, how can vermin be destroying us?" His advisors had no answer. Because the truth was simple, and terrible and impossible for the to accept. Humanity was not vermin. Humanity was a species that had been pushed to the edge of extinction, had stared into the abyss, and had come back angrier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. And now, the galaxy was going to learn what that meant. Prime hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered with cities that had stood for 10,000 years. Massive orbital stations circled the planet, each one bristling with weapons. The home fleet, over 2,000 ships, formed a defensive sphere around their world. They had pulled back forces from across the Dominion to protect their capital. It was the largest concentration of military power in galactic history. Admiral Park looked at it from the bridge of the New Dawn and felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Behind him floated the combined human fleet: 500 human warships, 200 vessels, smaller squadrons from 6 other species that had joined the alliance, almost 1,000 ships total. Against 2,000. "Admiral," his communications officer reported. "All Allied forces are in position. They are waiting for your order." Park looked at the faces around him. General stood ready to command the ground forces when the time came. Doctor monitored the nullifier systems. Captain IM had her scouts positioned throughout the system, watching for any tricks. And somewhere ahead, on a small destroyer equipped with the largest nullifier ever built, Lieutenant Miso was waiting. "Open a channel," Park said. "All ships." "Channel open, Admiral." Park took a breath. These might be the last words many of these people ever heard. They deserved truth, not inspiration. "This is Admiral Park. Today we end this war, not with a negotiated peace, not with a compromise that lets the escape justice. Today we break their power forever." He paused. "I will not lie to you. We are outnumbered. We will take losses. Some of us will not survive this day. But the people waiting behind those defenses are the same people who locked us in our system and watched us starve. The same people who exterminated 17 species. The same people who decided we did not deserve to exist." His voice hardened. "They were wrong about us. They have always been wrong about us. And today we prove it one final time. All ships prepare to engage." The Battle of Prime began. Human ships folded directly into the defensive sphere, appearing in positions that should have been impossible to reach. The element of surprise lasted only seconds, but that was enough. Ships exploded before they could raise shields. Orbital stations were torn apart by coordinated strikes. The organized defensive formation became chaos. Lieutenant Miso waited at the edge of the battle, watching for her moment. Her ship was small, fast, and carried enough nullifier power to disable a planet. She just had to get close enough to use it. "Lieutenant," her co-pilot said, "opening in Sector 7, 30 seconds." Nodded. 30 seconds. That was how long she would have once she folded inside the planetary shields. 30 seconds to deploy the nullifier and fold back out. If the targeting systems were even slightly faster than expected, she would not make it. She thought about Earth, about the brown and dying world she had grown up on, about the children who had never seen clean water or green trees, about her mother, who had died in the blockade, whispering stories about a world that used to be beautiful. "For them," she whispered. Her ship folded. She appeared inside the planetary shields, less than 100 kilometers above the surface of Prime. For one heartbeat, the sky was clear. Then every weapon on the planet turned toward her. Hands flew across the controls. The nullifier activated, sending a massive pulse outward in all directions. She felt the ship shudder as energy poured out of the device. Across the planet, shield generators exploded. The defensive satellites went dark. The orbital stations lost power. In a single instant, Prime's defenses collapsed completely. Missiles were already streaking toward her ship. Initiated the fold, felt reality twist around her, and then she was back with the fleet, her ship damaged but intact. "Lieutenant," Admiral Park's voice came over the communication system. "Status." "Nullifier deployed successfully, Admiral. Planetary shields are down." There was a moment of silence. Then Park said simply, "Well done, Lieutenant, well done." With the planetary shields gone, the battle shifted. Human ships poured through the gaps in the defenses. The home fleet fought desperately, but they were facing enemies who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. One by one, ships fell silent. General led the ground assault personally. Her landed in the heart of the capital city, and human soldiers spread through streets that had never known invasion. The military fought back, but they were demoralized, confused, facing an enemy that had appeared from nowhere and destroyed everything they believed in. Street by street, building by building, the humans advanced. Deep beneath the capital, in a bunker that had been built to survive anything, the High Arbiter sat on his throne and watched his empire die. His advisors had fled. His guards were falling back. The screens on his walls showed human soldiers getting closer every minute. He pressed a button on his throne. High Arbiter, a technician's face appeared on screen. The humans have breached the outer perimeter. We cannot hold them. I know. The High Arbiter's voice was calm. Activate the Void Protocol. The technician went pale. High Arbiter, that will destroy the entire planet, everyone on it, including you. And the human army and their leaders. Without them, the Alliance will fall apart. The Dominion can rebuild. The High Arbiter smiled, and there was madness in his yellow eyes. We have survived for 10,000 years. We will survive this. Activate the protocol. The technician hesitated. Then slowly he reached for the controls. Across the galaxy, in a small room on the New Dawn, Doctor was monitoring communication signals when she detected something that made her blood freeze. Admiral, she ran onto the bridge. They are activating something deep underground. Power readings are massive, increasing exponentially. I think they are going to destroy the planet. Park stared at her. Can they do that? If they have antimatter reserves large enough, yes, and the readings suggest they do. Park's mind raced. If Prime exploded, it would take the human fleet with it, General and her entire ground force, everything they had worked for. They would lose there, but humanity would lose its chance for victory. Can you stop it? He demanded. Doctor was already working. Her fingers flew across a portable console. The device is deep underground. We cannot reach it physically. But if I can hack their communication network, I might be able to send a shutdown command. How long do you need? I do not know, minutes, maybe less. Then do it. Park opened a channel to the surface. General, you need to find the High Arbiter. Now, he is trying to destroy the planet. On the surface, General heard the message and started running. Her soldiers cleared the way ahead of her, pushing through resistance, following the directions that Doctor was sending to her tactical display. The bunker entrance was hidden behind a waterfall in an artificial garden. General's team blasted through the doors and descended into the darkness below. They found the High Arbiter sitting on his throne, watching a countdown on a large screen. 10 minutes until detonation. His guards raised their weapons, then lowered them when they saw how many humans were pointing guns back at them. You are too late, the High Arbiter said. The countdown cannot be stopped. In 10 minutes we all die, and with us dies your little rebellion. General walked toward him slowly. You would kill your own people, your own planet, just to hurt us. I would burn the entire galaxy to preserve the Dominion. The High Arbiter's eyes were wild. You think you have won. You have won nothing. We are the masters of this galaxy. We always have been. We always will be, even if we have to rise from the ashes of our own world to prove it. The countdown reached 8 minutes. Then Doctor's voice came through General's communicator. General, I am in their system. I am sending a shutdown command now. On the screen, the countdown stopped. The High Arbiter stared in disbelief. No, that is impossible. The system is isolated. No one can access it remotely. Clearly someone can. General raised her weapon. It is over. The countdown is stopped. Your fleet is destroyed. Your planet is occupied. You have lost. The High Arbiter stood slowly. I will never surrender to vermin. He reached for something at his belt. General shot him. The High Arbiter of the Dominion, ruler of 12 star systems, master of an empire that had stood for 10,000 years, fell dead on the floor of his own bunker. His generals looked at the body. Then they looked at each other. Then, one by one, they raised their hands in surrender. 1 year later, the Galactic Tribunal convened on a neutral world to judge the crimes of the leadership. Representatives from 23 species sat in the gallery, including survivors from 17 species that they had tried to exterminate. Some of those survivors were the last of their kind, old and fragile, carrying the memories of entire civilizations in their heads. Admiral Park, retired now, sat beside Doctor. He had refused all offers of political power. He had fought the war to give humanity justice, not to rule anyone. "Do you think it was worth it?" Doctor asked quietly. "Everything we did." Park watched as the survivors, a elder describing how her entire family had been killed in front of her. A young member of a species Park had never heard of, explaining that he was the only one left who spoke his people's language. "They pushed us into a corner," he said. "They thought that would be the end of us, but corners are where humans learn to fight hardest, where we find out what we're really made of." He looked at the representatives of the Alliance, humans and a dozen other species sitting together, working together, building something new. "We could have burned them all. We had the power. We had the right, but we chose something harder. We chose to build instead of destroy." Doctor nodded slowly. "Maybe that is what makes us human." The tribunal continued. Justice, long delayed, finally arrived. 10 years later, in a school on a planet that had once been, a young alien child asked her teacher about the humans. "They were supposed to die," the old teacher said. "Everyone said they would. They were small, isolated, primitive by our standards. But they did not die." "No, they did not." "Why?" The teacher looked out the window at a sky where human and ships flew together in peace. "Because they refused to, and when you push someone that stubborn into a corner, you do not destroy them, you unleash them." The child nodded, not fully understanding. She would one day. Across the galaxy, humanity spread among the stars they had once been. They built new worlds and new alliances. They remembered the blockade and the suffering, but they did not let it define them. They had been pushed into a corner. Now the corner was gone, and the galaxy was finally free.